I'm going to go manual again. It scares me, that technology sometimes. But as I was driving over here, I was on 380, and there was this little Fiat in front of me, and it had a bumper sticker on one side, Batman bumper sticker, and on the other side it said Texans for Bernie. And I thought to myself, now there's someone grounded in reality. Folks, we formed this group because there's a battle going on in this country. And I'm not referring to the conflict in Iraq or the war in Afghanistan or ISIS in Syria. I'm talking about a battle here for our very freedoms, for the way that we want to live our lives, and for the way that we want to run our businesses. And it is an open question, and it's a shame whether we'll be allowed to worship the Almighty to the dictates of our own conscience in 2016 in America. And how does this happen? It's because just not enough Americans are participating in the electoral process. You got a lot of nuts in D.C., and you got plenty of nuts in Austin. I see them firsthand, and the Colonel saw them in D.C. And I think to myself, how did these people get there? Well, I did a little research, and I think I have a theory I'd like to share. And this is why we're here tonight, to form this group. In 2012, in Denton County, in November, 245,000 people participated in the election for president. 245,000. In 2014, in November, for the gubernatorial race, it was 142,000. Big difference. And in the primary in 2014, in March, it was 37,000. And in the municipal race, in May of 2015, the last one we've had, it was only 20,000. See how it goes? 245, 142, 37, and 20. Only 5% of the people in this county are even bothering to choose who is serving on our city councils and our school boards. Now, as much as Obama has tried to meddle with our lives, who do you think affects your life more on a day-to-day basis? City council and ISDs or the federal government? Obama didn't come pick up your trash. Some may say he is trash. But he isn't going to get it. How is it in Denton and Collin County, or sister counties, very red, two-thirds, in fact, if you look at any election, you'll see about two-thirds red. In Collin County, the largest city, Plano, their mayor is a dedicated, left-wing, Obama-supporting ideologue. Plano, Texas. Does San Francisco have a conservative mayor? No, left does a lot better job at the local level. In this county, proud to be the best county in Texas, two-thirds red. Our largest city, Denton, sanctuary city. Only 13 in the state. How in the world does that happen? It's because 95% of the folks don't even bother to choose. If you want to make a difference, if you want to have an impact, choose to. Because at the end of the day, this country's worth fighting for. Colonel West and myself had the opportunity to go down and listen to Coach Lou Holtz about a month ago at the George W. Bush Library. And he said something. He said, I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. He was born in poverty, but the silver spoon was America. And that's powerful. So if you think about it, what do you want your epitaph to say? Because I know what I want mine to say. He loved his country, he loved his family, and he fought for both. And everyone in this room can do the same thing. You just have to choose to. And that's why we formed the Denton County Conservative Coalition, for a brand that can be trusted, because we just want conservatives running. We want to vet them out. Because everybody says they're conservative in Denton County when they run. We had a little state rep we got over in 115. I don't want to use any names, so I'll just give you his initials. Bennett Ratliff. It was terrible. And a fellow named Matt Rinaldi stepped up and ran against him. And grassroots folks from all over this area came and helped Matt Rinaldi out. A lot of folks from Denton County went down there. Bennett Ratliff in a state rep race spent $650,000. State rep race. They pay us $600 a month. Okay? Just so happens his father and brother are registered lobbyists and they get $100,000 a year, right? But Matt Rinaldi spent only a tenth of that, and he won by 92 votes out of 9,000 cast. chose to make a difference. So we got rid of Bennett Ratliff and we installed Matt Rinaldi. That's important. That's what we want to do here. We ask you, beg you, beseech you, and plead with you, if you're not a member of the DCCC, please join tonight. It's $25 for the whole year. And we do not have meetings just to have meetings. We have meetings to hear from great Americans like Colonel Allen West. We have meetings to vet candidates in primaries and vet candidates at the municipal level in May. And then we're going to go out there and we're going to get the word out by sending mailers out to the folks, the best conservative voters in this county, to let them know that we have the stamp of approval of these particular candidates, so they can bring that card with them into the voting booth. Because you know how it is. There's a lot of names on those ballots sometimes. And even for us, heck, we don't know sometimes on judges. I have to call people I trust and say, who's good? Well, with social media, every one of you in this room has a megaphone as well. So please sign up. Please join us. Ron Simmons and I have Ron join me on this, and thank you, Ron, for doing this. Anybody that does pay tonight that has perfect attendance for the year, Ron and I are going to split the tab and we're going to pay for you next year. So if every single person here does, we're going to take care of you for your membership in 2017. Just a little added benefit because we're conservatives, like a good deal. So I have the privilege of, and thank you for letting me do that real quick. I have the privilege of introducing Colonel Allen West. So a little background. I remember in 2010, a friend of mine calls me on the phone. He says, Pat, you gotta see this video, man. Go to YouTube. What are you talking about? You gotta go to YouTube, get on your computer. There's this guy running for Congress in Florida. And he's awesome, he rocks. And I go, man, I gotta do this right now. He goes, just trust me, you'll love it. So I look up the video and there's this colonel and he's talking about things that just resonate with a conservative. I mean, he's saying, you know, he's getting up there and he's got a crowd going and he said, the Constitution says that this is about promoting general welfare, not providing it. And the crowd goes, ah. And then I'm sitting in my chair and I go, ah. He says, this is about equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. The crowd goes, ah. I go, ah. My friend goes, ah. And he said, and watch Obama and his class warfare. He's pitting Americans against one another. The crowd goes, ah. I said, I love this guy. What's going on? What can we do to help him? Well, Colonel Allen West won that congressional seat in 2010. And he hit the country by storm. Because they really hadn't had somebody like him in Congress for far too long. One of us, a neighbor. Not somebody with a pedigree, not somebody that was going there to D.C. just to do the bidding of the wealthy, of the special interests. But to do the bidding of 670,000 Floridians, he was elected to represent. And that was an anomaly in Washington, D.C. Colonel Allen West grew up in a modest home in Atlanta, Georgia. Went to the University of Tennessee. Yay! And we will not hold that against him. Was in ROTC, had a distinguished 23-year Army career. Was recipient of the Bronze Star, Meritorious Service Medal, amongst others. Served in Persian Gulf, in Iraqi Freedom, and in Desert Storm before that. He's a decorated war hero. He won't say that, but he is. And the favorite quote that I love from him was, "From when my soldiers' lives are at stake, I'll go through hell with a can of gasoline for them." And that's what we need, people that are selfless. And I've gotten to know him since he's moved to Texas in the last year. And I can tell you, he is the real deal. What you see is what you get. And that's what we need more of. So please, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome a great patriot for our country and our cause, Colonel Allen West.
Thanks a lot. And you know, I've been here in Texas for a year, and of course you have to get used to people when they say, you know, I went to UT, and I have to ask them, University of Tennessee? I say, no, University of Texas. They say, oh. I said, y'all remember that Santa Anna surrendered to a Tennessean. But the famous quote that I like to use, because you know, there in Tennessee, we pride ourselves of the volunteers, and of course, many people left Tennessee to come here to fight alongside the Texans for liberty and freedom. And if you recall the famous words of the son of Tennessee after he lost his congressional reelection, Davy Crockett, when he said, "You all can go to hell, I'm going to Texas." So after losing re-election in Florida, I guess you guys kind of imagine what I told you. And I am proud to be here. My last duty assignment was Fort Hood, Texas. My best friends that I've known for 28 years live right here in Corinth. My wife's parents live down in San Antonio. 3 of her brothers are here in Texas. So I guess this is where God meant for me to be. And you know what? I like wearing cowboy boots in a place where you don't get strange looks. Because down in Fort Lauderdale, if you put your cowboy boots on, people kind of look at you kind of weird. But before I get started, I want to give out something. Of course, most people say beware Greeks bearing gifts. So a good thing I was born and raised in Georgia. How many people here call themselves Christian? Okay. Now this is a process of elimination. Keep your hands up. How many people here call themselves Christian? They also have a concealed carry license. Okay? How many people here call themselves Christian? They have a concealed carry license and they're carrying right now. Okay? 2 ladies, come up. 2 ladies, come up. And over here. Ma'am, sir, come on up.
You don't have to have it concealed anymore.
I know. But I got a little something from some friends back in Tennessee. And it says on this, I am Christian and I carry. Luke 22, 35 through 37. In light of what just happened, thank you, Representative, on the 1st of January here in Texas. Now, I'm telling you, that don't mean we're dating. Y'all don't know about that if y'all too young. You don't have a collar or anything. I'm not going to. They got a camera going on. You know, YouTube. There we go.
My husband's gonna be so proud.
Because it says in Ephesians 6, 10 through 18, that we should put on full armor. Part of the armor of war. God bless you.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk to you briefly about 15 to 20 minutes, and I want to hear your questions because there's so much going on that I want to share with you. I came here a year ago and I took over the position as the president and CEO of the National Center for Policy Analysis. It's a 32-year-old conservative free market think tank that's located right down in Dallas, Texas, right off of the Parkway in Spring Valley. If you have a health savings account, that's something that came from NCPA. Employees that contribute to a 401k, that was a policy that came from NCPA. We are focused on tax and entitlement policy, education, healthcare, energy, and national security policy. We are looking at everything that the federal government should be doing to make sure that we continue to live in a country where our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is truly our inalienable right, as opposed to a guarantee of happiness, which is what some people believe that they can provide to you. And when I think about what Pat just talked to you all about, it comes down to a very interesting quote that came from the great philosopher Plato. And he said very simply, Representative, those who refuse to participate in politics shall be governed by their inferiors. Now that's my Georgia translation. You can go look it up, but it's right along that same line. And the problem that Pat just articulated is that this room should be packed. This room should be packed because if people understood conservative principles and values, they would understand that that is fundamentally what makes the United States the greatest nation that the world has ever known in 239 some odd years. Because we don't trust the government to provide the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We trust the individual as their relationship that comes from God. That's why Jefferson wrote that. Because at no place, in no time in the world had anyone ever said that the individual has an unalienable right that comes from the Creator. Because before that, it was all about divine rights theory. You know, the king, the queen, the duke, the duchess, the prince, the princesses, the barons, the baronesses. They were the ones that provided you your buy and your leave. But when John Locke, the great English political philosopher, came along, the true classical liberal, because this mess we see today is not liberalism, I want you to understand that. But John Locke talked about life, liberty, and property. Thomas Jefferson changed it to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's who we are fundamentally. But back in 2008, when someone stood up at a rally and said, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. You don't believe me, you can go look at YouTube and you can still see that video. You can see people that stood, they cheered, and they clapped. Will you tell me what has to be fundamentally transformed about a constitutional republic? The longest running constitutional republic that the world has ever known. But the reason why people cheered and clapped, because they don't know what it means to live in a constitutional republic. You see the man in the street interviews. Most people don't even understand what America is, and that's why people don't come out and participate in the voting process. Now I want to ask y'all a very tough question. Are there any black people in Denton County? No, I'm serious. Why aren't they here? Eh? How is it that a young man born and raised in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, could be standing here as, you know, some people say I'm a leading voice of conservatism in America. How can that be possible? But yet there's not a single black face here. How many Hispanics do you have here in Denton County? How many more should be populated all throughout this room? Because the thing is that we don't go out and talk about principle. If people understood what it meant for conservatism, they would be flocking. They would be coming to these meetings. They would be all over the place. They would be supporting the candidates that you all are vetting. But we do such a poor job of articulating that. That's why I'm so honored to be here in Texas at NCPA. Because it's not about having a think tank that just comes up with all these, you know, great things and they talk to each other and hum, 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 I'm smart and you're smart and harumph, harumph. It's about getting out there and talking to what I'll call the Waffle House crowd, the everyday American. In the military, we call it Joe and Jane six-pack. Because when you talk to Joe and Jane six-pack and you ask them, do you want to be dependent upon the government or do you want to have opportunities provided for you? When you go out and you talk to everyday Americans, you look at them, you say, do you want to be able to decide what is the best means to educate your child? Or do you want someone else to make that decision for you? When you go out and you talk to everyday Americans and you ask them very simply, when they come out of church, do you believe that you should be able to go out and celebrate your faith? And your faith should be something that, you know, is not separated from you. Because when people come out and say separation of church and state, we have allowed the other side to have us believe that that means we can't pray. We can't, you know, even give honor to God. We can't do, you know, that's why I'm cheering for Clemson. Not just the fact that I don't like this offensive coordinator that they have for the University of Alabama who ruined the University of Tennessee football team. But if you listen to what Dabo Swinney said after they won that game last week against Oklahoma, that's why I like Dabo Swinney. I like Dabo Swinney because the Freedom from Religion Foundation in Madison, Wisconsin came down and told him to stop having prayer. He said, sorry, brother, we're going to keep praying down here at the University of Clemson. That's why I like Dabo Swinney. And I wish we had more Dabo Swinneys. Because when Thomas Jefferson came up with the concept of separation of church and state, it is not in the Declaration. It is not written anywhere in the Federalist Papers. It's not in the Constitution. It was a letter that he wrote to the Danbury Baptist Convention that said here in America we would not have a head of state who was also the head of church. Because the example that they saw from England when Henry VIII declared himself that was that all of a sudden people in their beliefs, they were persecuted if they were not part of the state-sponsored church, which was the Church of England, which is why people came here and landed at Plymouth Rock, because they wanted to be able to celebrate their faith and freedom. And look at where we are today. when the state is fining people because of their beliefs. Because people are telling us that we don't have the right to have that belief. That's part of our liberty. Look at what is happening in our inner cities with the breakdown of families. And that's why you should have other faces here. Because see, back 50 years ago, when a Texas president came up with the Great Society programs, you know, this thing about instead of having the equality of opportunity, we're going to have an equality of outcomes. Then all of a sudden, President Lyndon Johnson came up with this fantastic idea, which says that if a young woman has a child out of wedlock, as long as she continues to not have a man in the home, the government will continue to give her a check, no matter how many children she has. And look what has happened in the inner city communities. 50 years ago, almost 77% of children in the black community had a mother and father in the home. You know where it is today? Only 25% have a mother and father in the home. And you can talk to my two daughters, Aubrey and Austin, and they can tell you what they see as they grew up. And that makes a difference. Why do you think you have the crime? Why do you think you have the problems? Why do you think you have the gun violence in the inner city? It has nothing to do with more background checks, people. But if we're not out there delivering this message, then people hear the message of free. People hear the message of fundamental transformation. People hear the message of separation of church and state. People hear the message that you now living in an America, you can't achieve. That's not who we are. And that's the message that we should be sending in Denton County, in Dallas County, in Tarrant County, all across the United States of America. Because when Ronald Reagan ran, remember how bad he beat Jimmy Carter? When he ran for re-election, remember he won 49 out of 50 states? Because he had a message of American exceptionalism, a message of American individualism, a message of American achievement. He talked about the greatness of this Constitution. He talked about our fundamental principles and values. And he talked about how we need to protect it, individually in our home and collectively through our strength. Because as he said, peace can only come through strength. And if you don't believe that, look at what just happened this week. While the President of the United States of America was on the stage crying, Special Forces A-Team was trapped and surrounded by the Taliban in Helmand. North Korea was firing off an atomic weapon. More people were released from Guantanamo Bay. And we just found out about recently another terrorist attack that occurred in a police station in Paris. And that was a test run. That's why he had a fake bell, because they were just testing to see what their reaction would be. I guarantee you there were other people waiting to go to other police stations if they had not engaged that individual. This is the world that we're living in when we show abject weakness. Look at what is happening between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Look at what is happening with ISIS. I cry for the children at Sandy Hook, but I also cry for the Christian children, the Assyrians, the Chaldeans, the Yazidi children that are being crucified, beheaded, the girls that are being raped, sold into slavery. All because we have chosen not to live up to the principles and values of who we are. When you have a Special Forces Green Beret Sergeant First Class that is kicked out of the United States Army because he punched an Afghan police chief who was guilty of raping a 12-year-old boy and beating his mother, that's not our principles and values. And that is what we should be talking about. So why are you here tonight? Because I want to tell you about the real epithet that you want to have on your grave that is so important to the people here in Texas. Because back in 490 BC, when tyranny confronted liberty at a faraway place called Thermopylae, there stood a vanguard, a phalanx of Spartan warriors. And when tyranny said to liberty, lay down your weapons, liberty, through the words of the Spartan king Leonidas, replied in Greek, molon lave. When the men of Texas stood against tyranny, and tyranny asked them to lay down their weapons, they replied in English the two words from what means molon labe in Greek. Come and get them. Come and take them. That's our history, and that's why you are here. And just the same as when you travel to Greece and you go to Thermopylae, you will find a monument to those Spartans, because Leonidas chose one Spartan warrior to go back and tell the story. And he said, go tell the Spartans and strangers passing by that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. That's the epithet that every American should want, because that's the epithet of the Minutemen that took the field at Lexington Green, the ones that stood at Concord Bridge, that enable us to sit here in this facility and breathe in the deep breath of liberty, freedom, and democracy. But ladies and gentlemen, in the twinkling of an eye, it can be lost if you don't pass it on to the next generation, if you're not willing to stand up and fight for it. That's why I'm so glad to see these young people here. Because this is not about us now. It's about the legacy that we pass on. And it's about what our children and our grandchildren will say to us. Don't be afraid to go out there, because the other side is not afraid. See, the reason why my community back in Atlanta, Georgia, the same neighborhood that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. grew up in, why it's been decimated? Because the other side took their message into that community and they destroyed it. We are a hope. We are a shining city that sits upon a hill. And if I'm right, that came from Matthew chapter 6. And that light is not meant to be set upon a table and a cover to put on it. You're the salt of the earth. And if this salt loses its flavor, what good are you? You should just be tossed out. Now's the time to be that light. Now's the time to be that salt. Now's the time to be that bond that commits us back to the establishing principles of this great constitutional republic. I have never seen a more dangerous time for the future of this country. And if you look at what has just happened in this first week, we got 51 more to go. This is going to be a tough year. But it doesn't have to end bad come November. It doesn't have to end bad come March. It doesn't have to end bad come May. The left always comes in wherever they are. And like locusts, they look for two things: city council and school board. That's what Pat was talking about. You guys are going out there and told everyone to come here to Texas because it's a great state for economic growth. Well, you need to have people standing at the border and telling folks to check that blue card. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you in this great state. It's an honor and a pleasure to be part of the legacy of Tennessee volunteers who came here to fight for liberty and freedom. And we got the same doggone fight right here now. And just the same as they said, come and take it. Just the same as they stood in the Alamo and refused to surrender. Just the same as Leonidas and those 300 Spartans did, even though they knew they had been betrayed. They did not turn, they did not walk away, they did not surrender. What will be your epithet as a constitutional conservative when you pass on to the pearly gates? God bless you all. What are your questions?
Representative Fallon, do some Q&A with you.
Come on up here. He's a smarter guy. He went to a real smart school. I went to an SEC school.
Yeah.
But we did win our bowl game.
After those fine words, I feel like I got a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other.
Yes, sir.
Ready to go. Questions for the Colonel? Tracy.
Colonel, now that you've moved to the greatest state in this nation, how long am I going to have to wait before I can cast my vote for you?
You know, every man from the South is part preacher. So I will tell you that if you go to Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all thy heart. Lean not upon your own understanding. All your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. So last September, when I came here and I gave a speech for the National Center for Policy Analysis, I did not know they were looking for a new president and CEO. In October 2014, they asked me when I would be interested to take the position. I prayed about it. I went to the family, we prayed about it. I went to our pastor back in South Florida. We got confirmation. And I drove here on Christmas Eve of 2014. So I don't know what God wants me to do. I don't know where he wants me to be. But my point is to be obedient to his will. And I will ask that you all will pray that I will listen and wait for that quiet, still voice. Because the problem is, too many people think that they hear from God and they go out and do stupid stuff. I don't want to do stupid stuff. But this is where he wanted me to be. It just all aligns so well. And if I am meant to be on a ballot in the state of Texas, he'll determine that. And you know what? Once he does, ain't nobody standing in his way. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about those soldiers you mentioned, because I've been following that story. I thought that some of them were left behind
Oh, you're talking about this past week?
in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Have all of that out, or?
Yeah, what they did was they actually had finally got the QRF force in there. They had to secure the site because they had a helicopter that crashed there, and we don't want the other side to be able to secure that helicopter. And look, I spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan. I know Marja very well. As a matter of fact, I've walked through Marja after the Marines had pacified that area. But when you base your foreign policy and national security strategy on campaign promises and not the reality on the ground, then you end up having special forces that are being trapped by an enemy that has now come back, and the Taliban now own more territory than they ever have in Afghanistan since 2001. So I want you to think about that for all of those brave men and women who have served in Afghanistan, lost limbs, lost their lives, to know that everything they have done, and also in Iraq, has gone in vain because of a campaign promise. Because someone stood up and unilaterally declared that he was ending combat operations. Let me tell you something about warfare. There's only two ways that you end combat operations. You win or you lose, okay? You don't walk away and say, I'm quitting. When you walk away and you say, I'm quitting, what happens on the football field? You walk away and say, I'm quitting. They're going to run up the score. That's exactly what is happening right now. ISIS was Al-Qaeda in Iraq that was defeated. And now we have allowed them to reconstitute and resurge, not just in Syria and Iraq, but now they have a base of operations in Libya. So this is the horrific situation. And understand this, once again, you have the smallest army since 1939, the smallest Navy in 100 years, since 1917, the smallest Marine Corps since World War I, and the oldest and the smallest Air Force fleet since we created the modern Air Force. That's what we're doing to our military capability and capacity. And you have all of these things that are going on. You know, I don't know if y'all heard about China and just recently landing airplanes on the man-made islands that they produce in the South China Sea. When was the last time we had an Asian nation that built this Navy and built runways on islands?
About 1940.
Didn't end up very well. Exact same things happened. Yes, ma'am?
Any tidbits of wisdom for new going into the Army? Our daughter's at boot camp at the moment, basic training.
Hey, look, I still have many friends that are in the military. My nephew is a major serving, and these are tough times to be in our military right now because you don't have the type of leadership emanating out of the White House and the Pentagon. Let me give you a great example. The Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus, who has never served in the military, just sent a letter to the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Marine Corps basic training will now be co-ed. Furthermore, every single reference to gender in the Marine Corps will be erased. The Marine Corps is now going to be gender neutral. The Marine Corps will no longer have infantrymen. They will just have infantry people, I guess. So this came from the Secretary of the Navy down to the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And you know how long they have before they have to present a plan, how they're going to implement this? The 16th of January. Now this is what has happened. You know, there is really no need for us to gender integrate our United States Special Operations Forces, you know, Ranger SEALs, you know, Special Forces, what have you, Marine Corps, Force Recon. But because people believe that every position in the military is just a job, and everyone should have the right to a job, that's what I talk about, equality of outcomes, not the opportunity. And so we are seeing a wholehearted, dedicated decimation of our military strength and capacity and capability. And if you want, I mean, we're going to start a national security petition next week. So please check our website for that, because we're going to talk about 5 very specific points, because they're going to start having the hearings for the fiscal year 2017 National Defense Authorization Act. We got to turn this around, because, like I said, we got 51 more weeks in this year. You think what just happened in this week? The enemy knows the clock is ticking. And if we don't correct it, if we continue to put the wrong person in the White House, Katie Barter's doing it. I don't know if we can recover.
What is your website address?
www.ncpa.org. We appreciate your support.
NCPA?
ncpa.org, National Center for Policy Analysis. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just wonder how the people in the military feel about, you've got to see sunset people.
They're hanging on. The question is, how do people in the military feel? Let me tell you something. You've got dedicated men and women who want to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. They're depending on us to make the change that needs to happen. They cannot lift their voices like they can, because they have to, you know, be respected. But they need us to be the ones to champion the strengthening of our military. This is a cataclysmic event that is occurring with our military right now. And when you have a country like Iran that has at least 3 violations of this Iranian nuclear deal, testing, firing off ballistic missiles and other provocations, and we continue to want to march down the road. In about 10 days, $150 billion of frozen assets will be unfrozen and sent to them. Where do you think that's going to go? Okay. This is incredible. I have never seen anything like that. So they're hanging on, but they need our voices to help them out. Yes, ma'am. No, you.
Pretty soon the movie on Benghazi is coming out.
Yeah, 13 hours.
And then.
What was that?
The movie about the Benghazi attack, 13 Hours, will be out next week, Friday.
So a lot of people will see things that maybe we don't know yet.
Yeah.
Until we see that movie.
Well.
But along with that,
Mhm.
I heard today that possibly within 60 to 90 days, they could charge Hillary Clinton with a crime, possibly, if that takes place. Does Hillary Clinton continue running for president? How does that work?
I mean, you know,
I know.
on our side, maybe not, but on their side, I mean, the standards are kind of low. But
I mean, if we had a
was the
Republican
question
candidate
now?
being charged
Yeah.
with a crime, what would happen?
well, the thing is, the question is about, and first and foremost, if you have not read